You don't need more motivation. You need a new assumption. Because the most dangerous thing you can do is live as if life is against you. Not because it's true, but because your mind will start proving it true. Here's what most people never notice. Your life doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your expectations. The expectation you carry into a room changes your posture. It changes your voice. It changes what you notice and what you ignore. And over time, it changes what you call reality. So, tonight, we install a different default. Not loud optimism. Not fake positivity. Not pretending everything is perfect. Something stronger. A quiet certainty. Act as if everything always works out. Not because you can control the world, but because you can control the lens you look through. And the lens decides your next move. Your next move decides your momentum. And momentum is how your future gets built. Think about it. Two people can face the same delay, the same rejection, the same uncertainty, and one becomes bitter, while the other becomes sharper. One collapses, while the other adapts. The difference is not luck. It's the assumption running in the background. When you assume things are working out, you stop panicking. You stop begging for signs. You stop needing permission. You become the kind of person who keeps moving even in silence. And silence is where most people quit. Because silence feels like nothing is happening. But silence is often the workshop. The place where life rearranges itself behind the scenes while you learn to stay steady. So for the next hour, you're not here to be entertained. You're here to be rewired. We'll build a mindset that doesn't crumble when results are slow. A mindset that doesn't need proof to stay disciplined. A mindset that moves like the ending is already decided because you decided it. And before we go further, let's begin with one simple sentence. Say it softly, like a promise you intend to keep. Everything is working out for me, even if I can't see it yet. Now, let's build the kind of certainty that makes that sentence real. Most people think their life is shaped by events. By what happened. By what didn't happen. By what went wrong. But that's not the deepest truth. Your life is shaped by the meaning you assign to events. Two people can face the same delay, the same rejection, the same uncertainty, and one of them grows stronger, while the other grows smaller. Not because one is luckier, not because one is special, because one is living under a different assumption. An assumption is not just a thought. It's a silent expectation. A background program running in your mind that says, this is how the world works, and this is what happens to me. And that background program becomes your atmosphere. It becomes the emotional weather you live inside. If your assumption is, nothing ever works out for me, you don't just feel discouraged. You start moving differently. You hesitate longer. You look for danger instead of opportunity. You interpret neutral moments as negative signs. You prepare for failure before you even begin. And then you call what happens reality. But it was never just reality. It was reality filtered through your expectation. Now, let's flip it. If your assumption is, everything is working out for me, you don't suddenly become delusional. You become calmer. You stop treating uncertainty as a threat. You stop reading every delay as rejection. You stop making panic your strategy, because your mind stops asking, "What if this goes wrong?" and starts asking, "How is this helping me move forward?" And that question alone can change your entire life. Because life does not only respond to what you want, it responds to what you repeatedly expect and what you repeatedly reinforce. This is why two people can live in the same city, with the same economy, the same challenges, the same 24 hours, and end up in completely different worlds. One lives in a world of closed doors. The other lives in a world of hidden doors. Not because the doors are different, but because their eyes are different. Your assumption becomes your attention. Your attention becomes your choices. Your choices become your habits. And your habits become your future. So when we say, act as if everything always works out, we're not talking about pretending. We're talking about choosing a lens and letting that lens shape your posture, your energy, your decisions. Think about a simple, everyday moment. You send a message. No reply. If your assumption is fear-based, your mind begins building a story instantly. They're ignoring me. I said something wrong. I'm not important. This always happens. And suddenly your body tightens. Your mood drops. You start checking your phone more. You lose focus. You feel smaller. But if your assumption is calm certainty, the story changes. They're busy. It'll come when it comes. Either way, I'm fine. Everything is still moving in my favor. Your body stays relaxed. Your mind stays clean. Your energy stays yours. Same situation, different atmosphere. And atmosphere decides what kind of person you become inside a moment. Now look at the bigger moments. A door closes. A plan collapses. A relationship ends. A job doesn't work out. A business fails. Most people don't just feel pain. They add a second wound, meaning, this proves I'm not good enough. This proves I can't win. This proves life is against me. And that meaning becomes an identity. Then the identity becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because the moment you believe life is against you, you start living like it. You become guarded. You stop taking bold action. You stop trusting your own timing. You stop finishing what you start. And you call it being realistic. But realism is often just fear wearing a suit. The truth is, life is not always easy, but it is always instructive. And if you learn to live under a higher assumption, you don't need to deny pain. You just refuse to let pain become a conclusion. That's the difference. Acting as if everything works out does not mean you never feel disappointment. It means you do not let disappointment define the ending. It means you stop treating the middle of the story like the final chapter. Because most of the time, what you call a setback is just life, rearranging the pieces. You are not being punished. You are being redirected. You are being refined. You are being strengthened. And yes, sometimes the refinement is uncomfortable. Sometimes it's slow. Sometimes it feels like silence. But silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. A seed grows in silence. A muscle grows in silence. A mind grows in silence. A life grows in silence. The loud parts are not where transformation happens. The loud parts are where people talk about transformation. The real work happens when nobody is clapping, when nobody is watching, when there is no proof yet and you still show up. That is where the assumption matters most. Because anyone can believe when it's obvious. Anyone can act as if when the bank account is full, when the relationship is smooth, when the results are visible. But the person who becomes unstoppable is the one who keeps their certainty before the evidence arrives. That person is not lucky. They are trained. They have learned to hold a stronger story, not a fantasy, a direction. Here's the strongest way to understand it. Your assumption is your inner decision about the meaning of life's movement. If you decide, this is happening to break me, you become fragile. If you decide, this is happening to build me, you become powerful. And once you become powerful, you move differently. You speak differently. You take better risks. You stay consistent longer. You stop quitting in the messy middle. And then, something almost unfair happens. The world starts rewarding you. Not because the world is magical, but because your behavior becomes aligned. Your focus sharpens. Your patience increases. Your emotions stop driving the car. You become the kind of person who creates outcomes instead of the kind of person who reacts to them. So let's make this practical. Starting today, when something goes wrong, you will not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" You will ask, "What is this building in me?" When something delays, you will not call it bad luck. You will call it timing training. When you feel uncertainty, you will not call it a sign to stop. You will call it a test of identity. Because your life will keep asking one question, again and again. Are you the person who collapses under the unknown, or the person who stays steady until the unknown becomes your advantage? And the answer is not spoken once. It is built daily, quietly, in how you respond when nothing is guaranteed, in how you move when no one is cheering, in how you keep going when you can't see the finish line yet. That is what act as if everything always works out really means. It means you choose the atmosphere you live in before life chooses it for you. And you protect that atmosphere like it's sacred. Because it is. It is your mind, your future, your identity. So before this chapter ends, take a slow breath and let this sentence land not as hype, but as a calm command. Everything is working out for me, even if I can't see it yet. And I will keep moving like it. That is the beginning. Motivation is loud. Certainty is quiet. Motivation shouts, "Let's go. You can do this." Certainty whispers, "I'm already on my way." Most people build their lives on motivation. And that is why most people stop. Because motivation is emotional. And emotions are unstable. They rise when things feel exciting. They collapse when things feel heavy. One good video. One inspiring quote. One powerful speech, and suddenly you feel unstoppable. But then reality shows up. You wake up tired. The results aren't visible yet. The progress feels slow. The silence feels uncomfortable. And motivation disappears. That's when most people quit, not because they aren't capable, but because they built their discipline on a feeling. Certainty is different. Certainty does not depend on how you feel. It does not need hype. It does not need applause. Certainty is a decision that has already been made. When you live with certainty, you don't ask yourself every morning, "Do I feel like doing this today?" you ask. "What does the person I decided to become do next?" That question alone removes friction. This is why calm certainty is more powerful than raw motivation. Motivation tries to push you forward. Certainty pulls you forward. Motivation burns hot and fast. Certainty burns slow and steady. And slow and steady is what builds real lives. Think about the people who actually win in the long run. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, not the most emotionally charged. The ones who win are usually calm. They don't panic when plans change. They don't collapse when progress slows. They don't need constant reassurance. They move like they already trust the process. Because they do. And trust creates patience. Patience creates consistency. Consistency creates results. Now, let's get something clear. Calm certainty is not passivity. It is not sitting back and waiting for the universe. It is action without desperation. It is effort without panic. It is intensity without emotional chaos. A desperate mind rushes. A certain mind executes. A desperate mind reacts to every signal. A certain mind stays on course. This is why people who act as if everything works out often look relaxed even when they're under pressure. They're not relaxed because nothing is wrong. They're relaxed because nothing has shaken their identity. They already decided who they are. And once identity is decided, behavior becomes automatic. Let's look at how motivation behaves under pressure. When things go wrong, motivation asks, "Why is this happening to me? Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should stop." Certainty asks a different question. "Okay, what's the next move?" Motivation negotiates. Certainty commits. Motivation looks for signs. Certainty creates direction. And direction is far more valuable than excitement. This is why calm certainty protects your energy. When you are motivated, you're emotionally invested in immediate outcomes. When you are certain, you're invested in the long game. That changes everything. You stop obsessing over short-term validation. You stop needing constant proof that you're on the right path. You stop reading meaning into every small fluctuation. You understand something most people never do. Progress is not linear. Growth is not loud. And results rarely announce themselves early. So, instead of panicking, you stay steady. Instead of rushing, you refine. Instead of quitting, you adjust. And adjustment is where mastery lives. Here's a powerful truth. Motivation is for starting. Certainty is for finishing. Anyone can start when they feel inspired. Very few can continue when the inspiration fades. But the people who continue are the ones who win. Not because they are stronger, but because they are calmer. They don't fight reality. They work with it. They don't demand instant rewards. They trust delayed outcomes. And trust is a form of strength. This is where acting as if everything works out becomes practical. When you assume the outcome is handled, you stop forcing. You stop overthinking every step. You stop exhausting yourself emotionally. You still work hard, but your work becomes cleaner, more focused, more deliberate, more sustainable. You're no longer sprinting on anxiety. You're walking with purpose. And walking with purpose beats running in circles every time. Let's bring this into your daily life. When you wake up and feel low energy, motivation says, wait until you feel better. Certainty says, do the work anyway. Energy will follow action. When you don't see results yet, motivation says, this isn't working. Certainty says, of course it's working. It just hasn't surfaced yet. When someone doubts you, motivation feels threatened. Certainty stays unmoved. Because certainty doesn't need agreement. It already made peace with the path. And this is the real advantage. When you act as if everything works out, you stop making fear-based decisions. You don't rush into bad choices just to escape discomfort. You don't cling to things that are misaligned. You don't abandon good plans because they take time. You become strategic. You understand that clarity often comes after movement, not before. And because you keep moving, clarity finds you. This is why calm certainty compounds. Each day you show up without emotional drama. You strengthen your self-trust. Each day you keep your word, especially when no one is watching. Your confidence becomes grounded, not inflated. You stop needing to prove anything. You know who you are becoming, and that knowing is unshakable. So here is a shift you must make. Stop asking yourself how you feel about your future. Start asking yourself how you are showing up for it. Feelings fluctuate. Identity does not unless you let it. Decide once. I am someone who finishes. I am someone who stays calm. I am someone who trusts the process and executes daily. Then let that decision carry you on the days motivation disappears. Because motivation will disappear. That's not a flaw. That's life. But certainty can stay if you train it. And training certainty means practicing calm action. Not dramatic action. Not emotional action. Calm. Consistent. Boring action. The kind that builds empires quietly. The kind that doesn't need an audience. The kind that proves, over time, that everything really does work out. Not because you wished for it, but because you became the kind of person who makes it inevitable. Most people spend their lives chasing results. They chase money. They chase confidence. They chase peace. They chase validation. They chase finally feeling ready. And the harder they chase, the farther everything feels. Because outcomes are not designed to be chased. They are designed to be produced. And what produces outcomes is not effort alone. It is identity. This is where most people misunderstand the idea of act as if. They think it means pretending, putting on a mask, forcing confidence. It doesn't. Act as if means aligning your behavior with the identity you've already chosen before the world confirms it. Outcomes follow identity the way shadows follow form. You don't grab the shadow. You shape the object. And identity is the object. Here is the quiet truth. You will never consistently outperform the version of yourself you believe you are. Not because you lack talent, but because your subconscious is loyal to identity. If you see yourself as someone who tries, your behavior will always include hesitation. If you see yourself as someone who hopes, your actions will always leave room for retreat. If you see yourself as someone who waits for signs, Your timing will always be late. But if you see yourself as someone who moves, everything changes. Identity answers questions before they are asked. A person who identifies as disciplined does not ask, "Should I do this today?" they ask, "When is the best time to do it?" A person who identifies as calm does not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" they ask, "What is this teaching me?" A person who identifies as someone whose life works out does not chase reassurance. They move with quiet certainty. This is why identity always comes first. Behavior flows from identity, not toward it. Trying to act confident without changing identity feels exhausting. Trying to stay consistent without identity feels forced. Trying to believe without embodiment feels fake. But when identity shifts, behavior becomes natural. You stop pushing yourself. You start expressing yourself. And that is the difference between temporary motivation and permanent change. Now, let's talk about the common trap. Most people say, "I'll act differently once I see results." That sounds logical, but it is backward. Results don't come to confirm identity. Identity creates results. Waiting for outcomes to validate you keeps you trapped in reaction mode. You wake up scanning reality. Did it work yet? Am I closer yet? Is this the right path? That constant checking drains energy. But when you shift identity first, you stop checking. You already know who you are becoming. And because you know, you move differently. You speak differently. You pace yourself differently. You respond instead of react. This is what act as if everything works out actually means. It means you no longer behave like someone seeking permission. You behave like someone following instructions from within. Not loudly, not aggressively, quietly. This is important for subconscious reprogramming. The subconscious does not change through force. It changes through consistency. When you repeatedly behave as the person you've chosen to be, your subconscious accepts the identity, not because you told it to, because you showed it. Every small aligned action sends a message. This is who we are now. And the subconscious updates accordingly. Here's an image to hold gently in your mind. Identity is the current beneath the water. Outcomes are the ripples on the surface. You don't control ripples directly. You shape the current. Most people splash the surface, hoping for change. Very few adjust the current. Now, let's bring this into daily life. If your identity is still someone trying to get their life together, your actions will always feel temporary. But if your identity becomes, "I am someone whose life is aligning," your actions stabilize. You stop rushing. You stop overcorrecting. You stop panicking when things don't move fast. Because alignment doesn't need urgency. It needs consistency. This is why winners often look calm early. Not because they are certain of timing, but because they are certain of direction. Direction is more powerful than speed. When identity is clear, speed takes care of itself. Now let's reframe effort. When you chase outcomes, effort feels heavy. When you express identity, effort feels purposeful. You're no longer trying to get something. You're simply being someone. That shift removes pressure. Pressure collapses performance. Clarity sustains it. This is why act as if works best when it is subtle. Not dramatic declarations. Not forcing emotion. but quiet embodiment. You walk a little slower. You speak a little calmer. You make decisions without explaining them to everyone. Not because you're arrogant, because you're grounded. Grounded people don't rush to prove. They know. And knowing changes posture. Posture changes behavior. Behavior changes outcomes. This is the sequence. Identity, behavior, outcome. Not the other way around. So instead of asking, how do I get the life I want? Ask, who would I be while this life is forming? Then live from that place. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Gently. Daily. This is especially powerful at night, when you fall asleep with the identity already assumed. The subconscious continues the work. You're not trying to fix yourself. You're reinforcing who you already are. That is why this process feels calm instead of tense. You are not fighting the old self. You are starving it. And you starve an identity by no longer feeding it behavior. Each time you choose alignment over panic, the old identity weakens. Each time you move without needing reassurance, the new identity strengthens. And eventually, something quiet happens. You stop thinking about acting as if you just act. Not because you're forcing it, but because there's no alternative that fits anymore. This is when outcomes begin to show up, not as miracles, as consequences. The natural consequence of consistency, the natural consequence of clarity, the natural consequence of being the person who creates. So let this chapter settle softly. You are not here to chase. You are here to become. And once identity leads, life follows. Before you drift into the next chapter, let this gentle auto-suggestion rest in your mind. I no longer chase outcomes. I move as the person who creates them. Everything aligns because I am aligned. Say it silently. Let it echo. And as you sleep, let your identity do the work. Most people don't realize this. But waiting for proof is one of the most subtle forms of fear. It doesn't look like fear. It looks like responsibility. It sounds reasonable. I just want to be sure. I'll move once I see a sign. I need confirmation before I commit. But underneath those words is hesitation, wearing a logical mask. This is what we call the evidence trap. The belief that you must see progress before you move, when in reality, progress appears because you move. Life does not reward those who wait for certainty. It responds to those who create it. And this is where acting as if everything works out becomes essential. Not as blind optimism, but as a refusal to let uncertainty control your behavior. Here's the quiet truth. Evidence always arrives after commitment, not before. If evidence came first, courage wouldn't be required. If proof came early, growth would be easy. But growth has never worked that way. The path only reveals itself once you're already walking. Waiting for signs keeps you mentally frozen. You stand at the edge of possibility, watching, analyzing, predicting. But life doesn't move for observers. It moves for participants. And the longer you wait for proof, the more comfortable non-action becomes. Comfort is dangerous here. Comfort convinces you that delay is wisdom. That hesitation is maturity. That staying still is safer than moving wrong. But staying still is never neutral. While you wait, Your confidence leaks. Your momentum fades. Your belief weakens. And slowly, quietly, your identity shifts back to someone who waits. This is why the evidence trap is so costly. It doesn't just delay outcomes. It trains you to doubt yourself. Now let's look at how this plays out internally. When you wait for signs, your nervous system stays alert. You're constantly scanning for reassurance. Every silence feels suspicious. Every setback feels like confirmation that you were wrong. That creates tension. And tension shortens your attention span. You jump between ideas. You abandon plans too early. You keep restarting instead of continuing. Not because the plan was wrong, but because you never gave it enough time to mature. This is why calm certainty beats visible evidence. Certainty allows you to move without emotional feedback. You don't need results today to know you're on track. You trust the direction you chose. That trust protects you from overreacting to temporary signals. Think about how builders work. They don't stop construction every time they don't see progress above ground. Most of the work happens beneath the surface. Foundations are poured where no one claps. Framework is assembled before the shape is obvious. If a builder waited for visible evidence before continuing, nothing would ever be finished. Life works the same way. Early stages are quiet. Growth is invisible. Alignment happens internally before it appears externally. When you wait for proof, you are essentially demanding results before the structure exists. That is backward. Act as if flips this. You build first. You believe first. You behave first. Then evidence catches up. This is not denial of reality. It is leadership of self. Leaders don't wait for consensus. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They decide, and then they stabilize their behavior around that decision. That stability is what creates results. Here's a powerful reframe. Lack of evidence is not a warning. It is a feature of growth. Silence does not mean failure. It means the process is still internal. Delays are not rejection. They are alignment periods. But you only learn this by continuing anyway. Most people quit in the quiet phase. They mistake invisibility for inefficiency. And that's why few finish. Now, let's bring this into your daily experience. When you don't see immediate results, your mind wants to ask, is this even working? Instead, ask a different question. Am I still aligned with who I chose to be? If the answer is yes, you keep going. No emotional negotiation. No proof required. Alignment is enough. This is where inner authority develops. You stop outsourcing your confidence to circumstances. You no longer need life to reassure you every day. You trust your own decisions. That trust builds self-respect, and self-respect creates power. This is especially important at night. When you fall asleep replaying doubt, your subconscious rehearses uncertainty. When you fall asleep anchored in certainty, your subconscious reinforces stability. So, before sleep, instead of scanning the day for proof, scan it for alignment. Did you act like the person you decided to be? Did you move forward even quietly? Did you stay steady when things were unclear? That is evidence enough. The rest will come. And it always does, just not on your emotional timeline. This is the paradox. Those who demand proof delay progress. Those who move without proof accelerate it, because movement creates feedback. Feedback creates learning. Learning creates refinement. Refinement creates results. But nothing happens while you wait. So release the need for signs. You don't need permission. You don't need confirmation. You don't need guarantees. You need direction and the courage to keep walking before the view opens. Let this chapter settle with one soft auto-suggestion. Not as a command, but as a reminder. I do not wait for signs. I create alignment. Evidence follows my commitment. Let that thought stay with you. And in the next chapter, we'll move into something even deeper. The single sentence of purpose that quietly pulls your entire life into order. Without force, without pressure, without noise. For now, rest in this knowing. The path does not reveal itself to those who stand still. It reveals itself to those who move. Most people don't lack ability. They lack direction. They wake up busy. They stay occupied. They move all day. And yet, at night, something feels off. Not because they didn't do enough, but because nothing they did felt anchored. This is what happens when effort has no center. Energy scatters. Focus leaks. Progress feels random. And the mind quietly asks, why am I even doing this? That question, unanswered, drains life faster than failure ever could. This is why definite purpose matters. Not a long vision board. Not a complex life plan. Not a motivational paragraph. One sentence that tells your nervous system, this is what matters. One sentence that your subconscious can orbit around. Because the subconscious does not like confusion. It seeks clarity the way the body seeks balance. And when clarity is missing, the mind fills the gap with distraction. Scrolling, overthinking, overcommitting, starting things that don't finish. Not because you're undisciplined, but because your energy has no gravity. Definite purpose creates gravity. It pulls your thoughts back when they drift. It pulls your actions into alignment. It pulls decisions out of emotion and into direction. Here's the mistake most people make. They think purpose has to be dramatic, grand, world-changing. It doesn't. Purpose does not need to impress anyone. It needs to organize you. A true purpose sentence is not written for the world. It is written for your subconscious. It must be simple enough to remember when you're tired, clear enough to guide you when you're uncertain, strong enough to steady you when emotions rise. That's it. When Napoleon Hill spoke about a chief aim, he wasn't talking about ambition alone. He was talking about mental economy. One direction prevents 1,000 distractions without a definite purpose. Every opportunity feels tempting. With one, most opportunities become irrelevant. This is where peace begins. Not because life becomes easier, but because decisions become simpler. Now let's talk about how this fits into acting as if everything works out. When you lack purpose, uncertainty feels threatening. Every delay feels personal. Every obstacle feels like rejection. But when purpose is clear, uncertainty loses its power. You no longer ask, is this good or bad? You ask, does this serve the direction I chose? And that single filter saves years of wasted energy. Purpose is not about predicting outcomes. It is about committing to direction. You don't need to know how everything will unfold. You need to know where you're aiming. The rest organizes itself over time. Here's an image to hold gently. Purpose is the North Star. You don't walk to it. You walk by it. It doesn't move. You do. And because it stays fixed, you always know if you're drifting. Now, how do you create this sentence? Not by forcing it. Not by overthinking. You listen for what keeps returning. What theme keeps calling you back? Even when you try to ignore it. What kind of life keeps pulling at you? Even when it feels inconvenient. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Your purpose is not something you invent. It is something you recognize. Then you refine it into one sentence. Not perfect. Just honest. For example, not to copy, but to feel the shape I build, a calm, disciplined life that creates freedom for me and those I love. I develop mastery and clarity through consistent action. I become someone whose presence brings stability and direction. Your sentence will be yours. And once you have it, something subtle happens. Your subconscious relaxes, because now it knows what to protect. It knows what to prioritize. It knows what to ignore. This is why people with purpose often look calm. Not because they have answers, but because they have orientation. Orientation reduces anxiety. When something goes wrong, you don't spiral. You adjust. When something doesn't work, you don't collapse. You recalibrate. Purpose turns problems into feedback, not threats. This is essential for retention both in life and in this audio. Because a purpose sentence is not meant to hype you up, it is meant to hold you steady. That's why it must be repeated gently, daily, not shouted, not dramatized. Read in the morning, recalled at night. Let it run quietly in the background of your mind. And here's the key reframe. You don't work toward your purpose. You work from it. Your habits come from it. Your boundaries come from it. Your patience comes from it. That is how everything begins to align. And alignment is what makes life feel like it's working out even when it's still forming. Now, let's address a fear many people have. What if I choose the wrong purpose? You won't. Because purpose evolves with you. A sentence that pulls you forward today will refine itself as you grow. What matters is not perfection. What matters is commitment. A clear direction beats a perfect one that's never chosen. This is why most people stay stuck. They wait for certainty before committing. But certainty comes after commitment. Purpose doesn't need proof. It needs practice. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, write one sentence, not 10, one, and let it be quiet. Let it be grounding. You don't need to show it to anyone. You don't need approval. This sentence is between you and your subconscious. And once it's there, everything else organizes around it. Let this chapter close with a soft auto-suggestion, meant to settle, not stimulate. I am clear about my direction. My purpose pulls my life into order. Everything aligns because I am aligned. Let that sentence rest. In the next chapter, we'll take this clarity and show how to reprogram the subconscious without force, without cringe, without resistance, in a way that feels natural, calm, and sustainable. For now, sleep, knowing this. Clarity is not loud. It is steady, and steadiness is power. Most people fail at reprogramming their mind for one simple reason. They try to force belief. They repeat affirmations they don't feel. They say words their nervous system doesn't trust. They speak loudly while something inside quietly resists. And resistance always wins. The subconscious mind is not impressed by volume. It responds to familiarity. This is the part most motivational content gets wrong. Autosuggestion is not about shouting confidence into existence. It's about lowering the volume of doubt until certainty feels natural. Your subconscious does not ask, "Is this true?" It asks, "Is this repeated often enough to feel normal?" That's it. And this is why cringe affirmations backfire. When you say something that feels fake, your system tightens. Your breath changes. Your body contracts. Your mind argues. Not because you're broken, but because your subconscious is protecting coherence. It does not want conflict between words and identity. So the key to autosuggestion is not exaggeration. It's believability. Gentle, neutral, grounded. Words that feel like a step forward, not a leap. Think of reprogramming like warming a room, not flipping a switch. If the room is cold, you don't blast heat instantly. You raise the temperature slowly until warmth feels normal. That's how lasting change happens. Now, let's connect this to acting as if everything works out. The mistake is saying, "Everything is perfect. I'm unstoppable. Nothing affects me." Your nervous system knows that's not true yet, so it resists. But if you say instead, "Things are moving in my favor, even if I don't see how yet," your system softens. New argument. No friction. Autosuggestion works when it slips past resistance. Here's the principle. The subconscious accepts what feels reasonable. Repeated consistently. Not dramatic truth. Familiar truth. This is why your old beliefs are so powerful. They weren't shouted into you. They were absorbed quietly. Through repetition. Through environment. Through internal dialogue. Autosuggestion simply reverses the process intentionally. Now, let's talk about tone. Autosuggestion is not a speech. It's an inner conversation. The tone that works best is the tone you'd use with someone you trust. Calm, steady, certain, but not forceful. More like guidance than command. Instead of "I am fearless and nothing scares me," try "I remain steady, even when things feel uncertain." Instead of "I always succeed," try "I keep moving forward." And that changes outcomes. These statements don't demand belief. They invite acceptance. And acceptance is where reprogramming begins. Another key mistake people make is timing. They try to reprogram their mind when they're overstimulated scrolling, rushing, multitasking. But the subconscious opens most easily when the mind is quiet. This is why autosuggestion works best. Before sleep, just after waking, during slow walks, in moments of stillness, not during hype, not during adrenaline. Calm states create openness. That's why this content is designed to be listened to gently, repeatedly, not consumed once. Now let's introduce a crucial reframe. Autosuggestion is not about changing reality. It's about changing how you relate to reality. When you change your interpretation, your behavior shifts. When behavior shifts, results follow. So instead of trying to convince yourself that success is guaranteed, you install the belief that you can remain steady regardless of outcome. That's real power. When the mind believes, I can handle whatever comes, fear loosens its grip. And when fear loosens, clarity returns. That's when life starts working out. Not because nothing goes wrong, but because you no longer collapse when it does. Now let's make this practical. Here is how auto-suggestion should feel. It does not spike emotion. It does not demand certainty. It feels like remembering, not forcing. If your body relaxes when you say it, you're doing it right. If your body tenses, soften the language. Short sentences work best. Your subconscious prefers simple patterns. Long affirmations feel like effort. Short phrases feel like truth. For example, I move with certainty. I don't rush my process. I trust the direction I'm walking. Things are aligning, even quietly. These phrases don't fight reality. They reframe it. And repetition is everything. Not repetition in one session, but repetition across days. This is why listening again and again matters. Not for motivation, for installation. Each repetition weakens the old loop. Doubt doesn't disappear overnight. It fades when it's no longer fed. Autosuggestion starves doubt by feeding something else. Calm certainty. Here's something most people don't realize. The subconscious learns faster from feeling than from logic. So, when you repeat autosuggestions, pair them with a relaxed state. Slow breathing. Soft attention. No urgency. Urgency tells the mind something is wrong. Calm tells it everything is under control. This is why acting as if works best when it's quiet. You don't announce certainty. You embody it. You show up. You continue. You don't over-explain. That behavior reinforces the suggestion more than words ever could. Words set the direction. Actions confirm it. And when words and actions match, the subconscious locks it in. Now let's close this chapter with something important. Autosuggestion is not about becoming someone else. It's about removing interference. Your clarity is already there. Your capability is already there. You're not installing strength, you're uninstalling noise. That's why this process feels calmer over time. Not louder. You'll notice fewer internal arguments, less overthinking, more grounded decisions. That's the sign it's working. Let this chapter settle with a gentle auto-suggestion, not to hype you up, but to guide your system into familiarity. My mind learns calm certainty. I speak to myself with clarity and trust. Change happens naturally when I repeat what is steady. In the next chapter, we'll talk about the extra mile effect, not as hustle, not as pressure, but as a quiet habit that makes success feel inevitable without burning you out. For now, rest in this truth. Reprogramming doesn't require force. It requires patience, repetition, and a voice your subconscious can believe. Most people think success comes from big moves, a bold decision, a dramatic breakthrough, a lucky moment that changes everything. But that's not how real momentum is built. Real momentum comes from something far quieter, something so subtle most people ignore it. It's called the extra mile, not the loud, exhausting version. Not hustle, not burnout, but the quiet habit of doing slightly more than required, consistently, without needing recognition. This habit doesn't just improve results. It changes identity. And identity is what makes outcomes inevitable. Here's the truth most people never accept. The extra mile is empty. That's why it works. Most people stop exactly where effort becomes uncomfortable, where no one is watching, where the reward isn't immediate. That's where almost everyone turns back. And that's why the extra mile is powerful, because hardly anyone is there. Not because they can't go further, but because they don't see the point. They ask, what's the payoff? Who will notice? Why bother? And that question alone keeps them average, because the extra mile doesn't pay immediately. It pays later. In leverage, in trust, in confidence, in momentum. The extra mile is where your self-image upgrades. When you do more than expected quietly, your subconscious receives a message: I am someone who follows through. Not because someone told you to, not because you were forced, but because it's who you are. That message compounds. Let's reframe something important. The extra mile is not about working harder. It's about removing negotiation with yourself. Most people negotiate constantly. I'll stop here. That's enough for today. I can finish it later. Each negotiation weakens trust in your own word. The extra mile ends negotiation. It says, when I start, I finish slightly stronger than required. That builds internal credibility. And internal credibility is everything. When you trust yourself, decisions get faster. Action becomes easier. Fear loses leverage. This is why some people seem lucky. They're not lucky. They're trusted by themselves first. Now here's where most people misunderstand this concept. They think the extra mile is dramatic. It's not. It's small. It's answering the email clearly instead of quickly. It's preparing one more detail. It's stopping 5 minutes later, not 2 hours later. It's refining instead of rushing. Tiny actions. Zero applause. But those tiny actions send a powerful signal to the subconscious: I do not cut corners. And the mind responds by raising standards automatically. Here's the quiet paradox. You don't chase confidence. You earn it. Confidence grows when your actions prove your words. And the extra mile is how you prove your words to yourself. Now let's connect this to acting as if everything works out. When you believe outcomes work in your favor, you don't rush. You don't panic. You don't look for shortcuts. You move with patience because you trust that effort compounds. The extra mile only feels unnecessary when you're operating from fear. Fear says, hurry. Get it done. Just survive. Certainty says, do it well. Finish clean. There's time. That shift changes everything. The extra mile is not pressure. It's alignment. You're not doing more to prove worth. You're doing more because you respect your work. That's an entirely different energy. People can feel it. Opportunities respond to it. Now let's talk about why this habit makes success inevitable. When you consistently go slightly beyond what's required, you become reliable. You become memorable. You become trusted. You become hard to replace. Not because you demand recognition, but because your work speaks. This creates a quiet gravity. People start coming back to you. They ask for your input. They give you more responsibility. Not because you asked, but because you earned it. And here's the deeper layer. Every time you go the extra mile, your identity shifts from I try to I finish. That identity removes doubt. When the mind knows, you'll follow through. It stops sabotaging you. Procrastination decreases. Overthinking fades. Energy stabilizes. Because the mind trusts the system. The extra mile builds inner alignment. Your thoughts, ease actions, and standards stop fighting each other. Now, let's clear an important misconception. The extra mile does not mean saying yes to everything. It does not mean overextending. It means doing what you choose to do with excellence. It's selective. You don't pour energy everywhere. You choose where it matters. That's maturity. That's how burnout disappears. Burnout doesn't come from effort. It comes from misaligned effort. The extra mile, when aligned with purpose, actually creates energy because it removes friction between intention and action. Here's a simple test. After doing something, ask yourself, did I leave this cleaner than I found it? That question alone builds mastery. Not perfection, but care. Care is what separates professionals from drifters. And care doesn't need to be loud. It's felt. Now, let's bring this inward. The most important place to apply the extra mile is not work. It's self-promises. Most people break small promises to themselves daily. I'll wake up earlier. I'll stop scrolling. I'll follow through. Each broken promise erodes self-trust. The extra mile reverses that. It says, I do what I said, plus a little more. That little more repairs trust. And when trust returns, confidence returns. Not performative confidence, quiet confidence. The kind that doesn't seek validation. That's the confidence that changes outcomes. Now let's anchor this chapter with a reframe. The extra mile is not about effort. It's about integrity. Integrity is not morality. It's alignment. When your actions match your standards, life simplifies. Decisions become cleaner. Emotions stabilize. You stop second-guessing yourself. That's why people who practice this habit feel calm even under pressure. They're not guessing who they are. They know. And knowing who you are is the strongest form of certainty. Now, before we close, here's the trap to avoid. Don't turn this into self-judgment. The extra mile is not about guilt. It's about choice. You choose one area, one habit, one commitment, and you practice finishing slightly stronger than required. That's it. No pressure, no drama, just consistency. Over time, that consistency reshapes identity, and identity reshapes destiny. Let's end this chapter with a soft auto-suggestion, not a command, but a reminder your system can accept. I finish what I start with care. I do a little more because I respect my path. My consistency makes outcomes inevitable. In the next chapter, we'll talk about mastermind energy, how your environment silently shapes your beliefs, and how protecting your mental space makes acting as if effortless instead of forced. For now, remember this. The extra mile doesn't exhaust you. It establishes you. Quietly. Inevitably. Most people believe their thoughts are personal. They think their confidence, doubt, ambition, and fear come from inside them. That's only partially true. In reality, your mind is constantly being tuned by the environment you live in and the people you allow access to your attention. This is what Napoleon Hill called the mastermind. Not a group for motivation, not networking, not surface-level positivity, but a shared mental atmosphere that silently shapes what you believe is possible. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You don't rise or fall alone. You rise or fall to the level of the thinking you're surrounded by. And most people are unconsciously surrounded by noise, complaints, sarcasm, fear disguised as realism, comfort disguised as balance. None of it feels dangerous. That's why it works. Your subconscious doesn't resist what feels normal. It absorbs it. If the dominant tone around you is doubt, your nervous system learns doubt. If the dominant tone is urgency and panic, your system learns stress. If the dominant tone is discipline and calm certainty, your system learns stability. This is mastermind energy. It's not what people tell you directly. It's what they model repeatedly. Now here's where most people get trapped. They think, I'm strong enough to stay focused no matter who I'm around. That sounds empowering, but it's rarely true. Even the strongest minds are influenced by proximity. That's not weakness. That's biology. The brain is designed to synchronize. You naturally mirror speech patterns, emotional tone, belief limits. That's why environment matters more than motivation. Motivation spikes. Environment imprints. And this is why acting as if everything works out becomes almost impossible when you're constantly surrounded by people who expect things to fail. They don't have to say it. Their energy says it for them. Their jokes, their sighs, their cynicism. It trains your system to brace instead of trust. So let's be clear. Mastermind energy is not about cutting everyone off. It's about protecting your internal climate. You don't argue with negativity. You don't try to convince skeptics. You reduce exposure. Just like you wouldn't try to sleep in a noisy room and blame yourself for being tired. You change the room. Now let's redefine what a true mastermind looks like. A mastermind is any environment, physical or digital, that reinforces these qualities. Calm certainty, long-term thinking, personal responsibility, emotional regulation, quiet discipline, notice what's missing, hype, drama, urgency, complaining. A real mastermind feels grounded. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't inflate you. It doesn't drain you. It stabilizes you. That's why some conversations leave you clearer, and others leave you exhausted. That's mastermind energy at work. Now here's the part most people overlook. You don't need a group to start. You need alignment. One aligned voice can outweigh 10 distracted ones. One calm influence can reset your entire nervous system. This is why audio, what you listen to daily, is part of your mastermind. So is what you read, what you scroll, what you replay internally. Your mind doesn't distinguish between external voices and internal ones. Repetition equals authority. So, if the loudest voice in your life is fear-based media, your subconscious assumes fear is realistic. If the loudest voice is calm certainty, your subconscious adapts to stability. This is why returning to this type of content matters. Not for motivation, for environmental conditioning. Now let's address a difficult truth. Sometimes the people closest to you cannot walk with the version of you you're becoming. Not because they're bad, but because they are attached to an older version of you. And when you change, it disrupts their internal balance. So they pull you back, often unconsciously, through jokes, through concern, through realistic advice. This is where boundaries become essential. Boundaries are not rejection. They are self-respect. You don't need to explain your growth. You don't need permission to evolve. You simply choose what influences you allow. This is how acting as if everything works out becomes natural instead of forced. You stop swimming against emotional currents. Now, let's bring this inward. Your internal dialogue is also part of your mastermind. If your inner voice sounds rushed, harsh, or skeptical, that's an environment problem, not a character flaw. You didn't invent that voice. You absorbed it. And the way you change it is the same way it was installed. Repeated exposure to a different tone. That's why calm, grounded repetition works. It replaces the old mental environment. Over time, your thoughts become quieter, more measured, less reactive. Not because you fixed yourself, but because you changed the atmosphere. This is also why high performers guard their mornings. The first inputs of the day set the emotional frequency. Panic early equal tension all day. Calm early equal resilience later. Mastermind energy begins the moment you wake up. What you allow in music, news, silence, audio decides how you interpret everything that follows. This is why certainty must be fed, not occasionally, daily. Now let's make this practical. Ask yourself, who do I feel clearer after speaking with? What content calms my nervous system? What environments increase overthinking? Then adjust. Not dramatically, deliberately. Small shifts compound fast. Less exposure to chaos. More exposure to clarity. This is not avoidance. This is strategy. Now, let's end this chapter with a crucial realization. You don't need more willpower. You need a better mental ecosystem. When your environment supports certainty, acting as if requires no effort, it feels natural. Your behavior aligns automatically. That's when outcomes begin to work out not magically, but mechanically, because your decisions improve. Your patience increases. Your reactions soften. And life responds to that version of you. Let's close with a grounding auto-suggestion, not loud, not emotional, just stable. I choose environments that support clarity. I protect my mental space with intention. What surrounds me strengthens who I'm becoming. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they leave the door open. A door back to the old self. A quiet escape. A hidden negotiation. I'll try. But if it doesn't work, I can always go back. That sentence alone dissolves power, because the subconscious only commits fully when there is no retreat. Decision power is not intensity. It's finality. And finality is what separates people who change once from people who change permanently. Here's the truth most people avoid. You cannot become a new version of yourself while keeping the old version comfortable. One of them must lose oxygen. Not violently, not emotionally, but decisively. Burning the old exit does not mean destroying your past. It means removing the option to stay the same. And this is where acting as if everything works out stops being a mindset and becomes a direction. Because when the exit is gone, your nervous system reorganizes. It stops asking, "Should I keep going?" and starts asking, "How do I make this work?" That shift changes everything. Most people live in constant negotiation with themselves. They decide, then reconsider, then hesitate, then wait. That cycle drains energy. Decision power collapses that cycle into one moment. A clean line. Before, after. This is not impulsive. It's grounded. It's the difference between "I want to change" and "I have changed." Now let's address something important. Burning the old exit does not mean forcing results. It means committing to behavior, not outcome. You don't decide that success must happen tomorrow. You decide that retreat is no longer an option. That's calmer than pressure, and far more powerful. Because when retreat disappears, your actions simplify. You stop wasting energy on second-guessing. You stop rehearsing failure. You stop preparing excuses. Your focus sharpens. This is why people who make final decisions often feel calmer, not more stressed. Ambivalence creates anxiety. Decision creates clarity. Now let's talk about what burning the exit really looks like. It's rarely dramatic. It's subtle. It looks like no longer explaining your goals to skeptics, no longer revisiting the same internal debate, no longer keeping habits just in case, no longer entertaining versions of yourself you've outgrown. It's not loud. It's firm. You don't announce it. You align to it. Here's a powerful reframe. Decision power is not about saying yes. It's about saying no. No to old patterns. No to half commitment. No to emotional bargaining. And when you say no consistently, a new path becomes obvious. Not easier, but clearer. Now let's connect this to certainty. People think certainty comes from confidence. It doesn't. Certainty comes from removal of alternatives. When there's only one direction left, movement becomes natural. Think about it. When there are 10 options, the mind hesitates. When there is one path, the body moves. That's why burning the old exit is essential. It simplifies the nervous system. It reduces noise. It creates momentum, not by force, but by necessity. Now, let's talk about fear. Fear thrives on open doors. If this fails, what then? What if I'm wrong? What if I regret it? Those questions disappear when the decision is final. Not because fear vanishes, but because it loses authority. Fear becomes background noise instead of leadership. This is how strong people move with fear present. They don't wait for fear to leave. They decide without consulting it. That's decision power. And here's the part most people misunderstand. Burning the old exit does not make you rigid. It makes you adaptable. Because once the direction is fixed, you become flexible in how you get there. You stop clinging to specific outcomes. You adjust strategy without questioning identity. That's maturity. That's how people progress steadily instead of cycling. Now, let's talk about the internal exit. The most dangerous exit is not external. It's internal language. Phrases like, "I'll see how I feel," "maybe later," "I'm not sure yet." These phrases sound harmless, but they quietly keep the door open. Decision power changes language, not to hype, to clarity. Instead of, "I'll try," it becomes, "I'll continue." Instead of, "I hope," it becomes, "I'm committed." Instead of, "if it works," it becomes, "I'll adjust until it does." That language retrains the subconscious. It signals stability, and stability is what allows acting as if to feel real. Now, let's ground this. Burning the old exit does not mean quitting everything at once. It means choosing one identity shift and removing its opposite. 1. For example, if you decide you're someone who finishes what you start, you stop leaving things incomplete. If you decide you're someone who protects your energy, you stop over-explaining. If you decide you're someone who moves forward calmly, you stop rehearsing worst-case scenarios, small but final. This is how identity installs itself, one non-negotiable at a time. Now, let's address resistance. When you burn an exit, your system will test you. Old habits will whisper. Old comfort will invite you back. Not because you're weak, but because the old identity is losing ground. This is normal. And this is where most people reopen the door. They interpret discomfort as a sign they were wrong. But discomfort is just the nervous system recalibrating. Don't argue with it. Stay consistent. The system adapts quickly when it realizes the decision is real. And then something subtle happens. The noise fades. The pull weakens. The new path stabilizes. That's when acting as if everything works out stops being effort and starts being posture. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. Your actions already reflect the decision. Now let's close this chapter with clarity. Decision power is not about control. It's about direction without negotiation. You don't force the future. You remove the past's influence. That's all. Let's end with a calm auto-suggestion, not aggressive, not dramatic, but firm. I choose one direction and release the rest. I do not negotiate with the life I've outgrown. My decisions create the path forward. In the final chapter, we'll bring everything together, how acting as if becomes effortless when certainty is installed, and how you fall asleep with trust and wake up already moving. For now, remember, you don't need more options. You need fewer exits. And once they're gone, the path reveals itself. There comes a point where effort must soften, not because you stop caring, but because you've already decided. This is the final shift. Not doing more, not thinking harder, not proving anything, but allowing alignment to complete its work. Most people misunderstand act as if. They think it means pretending, forcing confidence, putting on a mask. It doesn't. Acting as if is not performance. It's posture. It's how you stand in your own life once the inner debate has ended. By now, you've seen the pattern. Your assumptions shape focus. Focus shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. And the moment you stop interrupting that process, life starts catching up, quietly, naturally, without announcement. This chapter is not about pushing forward. It's about getting out of your own way. Because once the inner system is aligned, effort becomes lighter. You don't need to chase certainty. You live from it. You don't rush the outcome. You trust the direction. This is where most people sabotage themselves. They plant the seed, then dig it up every day to check if it's growing. They decide, then keep revisiting the decision. They act as if but keep emotionally monitoring results. That monitoring reintroduces doubt, and doubt slows everything down. So here's the final reframe. Acting as if everything works out means you stop checking. You do your part. Then you rest your mind. You continue, but you don't hover. This is not passive. It's precise. Think of it like falling asleep. You don't force sleep. You create the conditions, then let the body take over. Life works the same way. Once your assumptions are set, once your identity is stable, once your decisions are final, you let life respond. And it always does. Not always how you expect, but always in alignment with who you're being. This is why calm is a signal of certainty. When you're aligned, your nervous system relaxes. When it relaxes, your perception sharpens. You notice opportunities you would have missed before. You respond instead of react. You choose better timing. That's how life catches up. Not through miracles, through mechanics. Now, let's talk about the final posture. Acting as if looks like this. You move at a steady pace. You don't over-explain your choices. You don't rush to be understood. You don't collapse when plans adjust. You live as someone who trusts process. Not blindly, but calmly. This is the posture of someone who knows they're on the path. And when you live this way, you stop creating friction. You stop resisting delays. You stop dramatizing detours. You stop interpreting silence as failure. Silence becomes space. Space allows alignment. This is where things start clicking. Not all at once, but one by one. The right conversation, the right insight, the right opening. And you don't cling to any of it. You simply respond. This is the difference between chasing life and letting life meet you halfway. Now let's connect this to sleep. Sleep is where integration happens. The subconscious organizes what the conscious releases. When you fall asleep with trust, not tension, the mind completes its work. That's why certainty before sleep is powerful. Not affirmations shouted into the dark, but quiet acceptance. A simple inner tone that says, "I've done enough for today." That tone tells the nervous system it's safe to rest. And when the system rests, clarity deepens. You wake up not frantic, but oriented. Not desperate, but directed. This is what letting life catch up feels like. You don't wake up needing answers. You wake up ready to move. Now here's the final truth of this entire journey. You don't attract what you want. You allow what matches you. When your inner world stabilizes, your outer world reorganizes. Not instantly, but inevitably, because inconsistency can't survive alignment. That's why acting as if everything works out is not optimism. It's discipline of interpretation. You choose how you read events. You choose what you reinforce. You choose what you feed. And once those choices become default, effort decreases. Life feels less heavy. Not because challenges disappear, but because you're no longer fighting yourself. This is where most people stop striving. And ironically, this is where things accelerate. So let this be the final image you carry. You've already set the direction. You're already walking it. You no longer look back. You move forward calmly, knowing that life adjusts to consistency. Now, let's close this entire journey with one final auto-suggestion: soft, grounded, and complete. I move forward with quiet certainty. I do my part and release the rest. Life responds naturally to who I've become. And that's it. No rush, no force, no chasing, just alignment. You act as if, and then you let life catch up, because it always does. As this audio comes to a close, there is nothing more you need to figure out tonight. You don't need to replay your past. You don't need to predict the future. You don't need to force belief. You've already done the most important work. You chose a posture. You chose to stop negotiating with doubt. You chose to act as if things are aligning, and then to let alignment do its job. This is where real transformation locks in. Not in effort, not in intensity, but in rested certainty. Tonight, you don't fall asleep hoping. You fall asleep trusting. Trusting that your assumptions are shaping your atmosphere. Trusting that your identity is already shifting. Trusting that life responds to consistency, not panic. And while you sleep, your subconscious does what it always does best. It organizes. It integrates. It reinforces the patterns you've repeated calmly. You don't need to watch for signs. You don't need proof by morning. Just let your system settle into the feeling of quiet alignment. If this audio resonated with you, the most powerful thing you can do is return to it. Not as entertainment, as installation. Let it play again on another night. Let the words become familiar. Let certainty replace urgency. Because repetition is how identity is built. If you want to support this channel, you can like this video and subscribe to Sleep Success Audiobook for more calm, original, long-form audios designed for sleep, focus, and subconscious reprogramming. And if you feel ready, leave a simple comment below. I trust the process. That's not for us. That's for you. Now, there's nothing left to do. Slow your breath. Relax your jaw. Let your shoulders drop. You've chosen your direction. Life knows how to meet you there. Sleep well, and let everything continue to work out quietly, naturally, inevitably.